Daniel Grant had stood in many rooms during his 30 years as Earth's voice among the stars. He had argued in trade halls and negotiated in war chambers. He had smiled when he wanted to scream and stayed calm when his blood ran hot. But this room, this moment, would be his last. The council chamber of the Galactic Collective stretched before him like a cathedral built by giants. 12 massive pillars rose from the floor, each one representing a founding species of the Alliance. Floating platforms carried delegates from thousands of worlds, light filtered through crystalline walls, painting everything in shades of blue and gold. It was beautiful. It was also a cage. The Valthorian High Speaker towered above everyone else. Its body was made of living crystal, sharp edges catching the light like broken glass. When it spoke, its voice echoed through the chamber like wind howling through an empty canyon. "The Council has reached its decision regarding the human petition," the speaker announced. "After careful review, we find that humanity is not yet ready for expanded rights within the collective." Daniel felt the words hit him like physical blows. Behind him, a holographic screen showed billions of faces watching from Earth, from Mars, from the stations orbiting Jupiter. They had all hoped. They had all believed that this time would be different. "Humanity will be denied voting rights for another 500 years, the speaker continued. "Your colonies will remain restricted to your current 3 systems. Your military will be reduced by 60%. Effective immediately. These measures are necessary for galactic stability." A murmur ran through the chamber. Some delegates nodded in approval. Others looked away, unwilling to meet Daniel's eyes. A few seemed uncomfortable, but none of them spoke up. Daniel thought about the 300 years since humanity had first joined the collective. He thought about the wars they had fought to protect species that now voted against them. He thought about the diseases they had cured, the technologies they had shared, the lives they had saved. None of it mattered. To the collective, humans would always be the newcomers, the children, the dangerous ones who needed to be controlled. "We do this for your own good," the speaker said, and there was something almost like pity in its crystalline voice. "Humanity is young, emotional, unpredictable. In time, you will learn patience. In time, you will earn trust." Daniel looked at the faces around him. He saw the Relians, whose trade empire would collapse without human engineers. He saw the Krellians, whose entire species had been saved by a human doctor. He saw the Vorath, who had begged for human soldiers when the Vorn swarm threatened their borders. All of them sat silent. All of them looked away. Something broke inside Daniel. Not his spirit, something else. Something that had been holding him back for 300 years. "No," he said. The word was quiet, but it carried through the chamber like thunder. The speaker's crystal body flickered with surprise. "I'm sorry, Ambassador Grant. Did you say something?" Daniel straightened his shoulders. He thought about his grandmother, who had told him stories about Earth before first contact. He thought about his daughter, who had never known a sky without alien ships passing overhead. He thought about every human who had ever been told they weren't good enough, weren't old enough, weren't ready enough. "I said no," Daniel repeated. "We're done." The chamber fell silent. 10,000 delegates stared at the small human standing alone on his platform. "Done?" the speaker asked. "I do not understand. The decision has been made. There is nothing to be done." Daniel smiled. It was not a happy smile. "You're right. There's nothing to be done. So we're leaving." Far above Earth, Admiral Lisa Mercer sat in the command center of Orbital Station 7. She was 63 years old, with silver hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Around her, officers monitored screens showing every human ship and station in the galaxy. Thousands of vessels, millions of people, all of them waiting. Her communicator buzzed. Daniel's voice came through, calm and clear. "It's time, Lisa." Lisa had known this moment would come. They had planned for it in secret for decades. They had built ships in hidden shipyards and developed technologies in underground labs. They had prepared for the day when humanity would finally say enough. "All stations," Lisa said into her microphone. This is Admiral Mercer. Activate Exodus protocols. Authorization code, walking out. Across the galaxy, human crews received the message. On trade stations and mining colonies, on research outposts and military bases, people stopped what they were doing. They looked at each other, they nodded, and they began to move. On the planet Relia, human traders closed their shops and walked to their ships. They left behind confused customers and half-finished deals. On the Krellian homeworld, human doctors handed their patients to alien colleagues and said goodbye. On 100 worlds and 1,000 stations, humans packed their belongings and headed home. The collective watched in confusion. Ambassadors sent frantic messages asking what was happening. Trade partners demanded explanations. Military allies asked if this was some kind of protest. Daniel Grant gave them their answer in a final broadcast. He stood on the deck of a transport ship, Earth growing larger in the window behind him. For 300 years, we tried to be part of your family, he said. We fought your wars. We cured your diseases. We shared our knowledge and our resources. And in return, you treated us like children, like dangers to be contained, like problems to be managed. He paused. Behind him, thousands of ships streamed toward the Sol system. We're not angry. We're not threatening revenge. We're simply leaving. You don't want us. Fine. We don't need you. The broadcast ended. The ships kept coming. Within 72 hours, every human in the galaxy had returned to the Sol system. Then something remarkable happened. A barrier of pure energy appeared around the sun and all its planets. It was technology no one had ever seen before. Ships that approached too close simply vanished. Probes sent to investigate returned nothing. The Sol system had become a locked room, and humanity had thrown away the key. The last message from Earth was short and simple. Lisa Mercer's voice, steady and final. Don't call us. We'll call you. Then there was only silence. The Galactic Collective stared at the barrier and tried to understand what had happened. They had pushed humanity away for centuries, treating them as lesser beings. Now humanity was gone, and the universe suddenly felt very empty. On her way to the barrier, Lisa Mercer stood at a window and watched the stars pass by. She thought about all the battles she had fought for allies who never respected her. She thought about all the sacrifices her people had made for a galaxy that saw them as dangerous animals. They're going to regret this, she said quietly. Her first officer, a young man named Kevin Walsh, stood beside her. Do you think they'll try to stop us? Lisa smiled. They can try. But we've been preparing for this day for a very long time. Let them realize what they've lost. Let them understand what they threw away. The ship crossed the barrier. Behind them, the entrance sealed shut. Earth had walked out. The universe would have to learn to live without them. 20 years passed like water through open fingers. The galaxy changed in ways no one had expected. Ambassador Kevin Torres sat in his office on the Relian homeworld, staring at reports that grew worse every day. He was old now, his scales fading from bright green to dull gray. He had spent his entire career building trade networks across the collective. Now those networks were falling apart. The numbers told a terrible story. Since the humans left, trade had dropped by 34%. Medical breakthroughs had slowed to a crawl. 17 border wars had erupted in regions once kept peaceful by human diplomats. The Vorn swarm, a nightmare that fed on living worlds, had grown bold. Without human soldiers to hold them back, the swarm had already consumed 6 colony planets. Kevin remembered the day the humans walked out. He remembered thinking it was a bluff. Surely they would come back. Surely they needed the collective as much as the collective needed them. He had been wrong. On the Krellian homeworld, a species was dying. Dr. Megan Shaw had saved them once, 25 years ago. She had worked day and night to cure a plague that was killing millions. The Krellians had loved her. They had built statues in her honor. But when humanity left, Megan left too. Now the plague had returned, mutated into something worse. Krellian doctors worked desperately, but they could not find a cure. Their best scientists had spent years trying to contact Megan, but every message disappeared into the Sol barrier. Elder Than of the Krellian High Council stood at the edge of the barrier in a small ship. Behind him, his planet was dying. His people were crying out for help. He broadcast his message into the void, not knowing if anyone would hear. Dr. Shaw, if you can hear this, we need you. Our children are sick. Our elders are dying. Please, we are begging you. Come back. There was no response. The barrier remained silent and dark. Inside the barrier, humanity was transforming. Adam Price stood on a platform floating above the surface of the sun. He wore no suit, needed no protection. The technology his team had developed allowed humans to walk in places that would have killed them instantly just decades ago. Behind him, a structure larger than any planet stretched across the solar corona. It was a Dyson ring, harvesting energy directly from the sun. Power output is stable, his assistant called out. We're generating more energy than the entire collective uses in a year. Adam nodded. But his mind was already on the next project. Since the isolation began, humanity had been free to experiment without limits. No more rules about dangerous research. No more restrictions on advancement. No more alien councils telling them what they could and could not do. The results had been extraordinary. In 20 years, humanity had achieved what should have taken millennia. In a laboratory on Mars, Dr. Samantha Cole studied consciousness itself. She had mapped the human mind down to its smallest parts. She understood how thought became action, how memory became identity. Her work had led to technologies that the collective would consider magic. On the far edge of the solar system, Captain Nicole Barrett commanded a ship unlike any that had existed before. It was small, sleek, and impossibly fast. She stood at the helm as her crew prepared for a test that would change everything. Wormhole generator is charged, her navigator reported. Destination, Andromeda Galaxy. Nicole took a deep breath. Andromeda was 2 million light-years away. The fastest ships in the collective would take thousands of years to reach it. Her ship would make the journey in seconds. Engage, she said. Space twisted around them. Light bent into impossible shapes. For a brief moment, Nicole felt like she was everywhere and nowhere at once. Then the stars changed. The familiar constellations of home were gone, replaced by alien patterns no human had ever seen. We did it, her navigator whispered. We're in Andromeda, Nicole smiled. This was just the beginning. Back on Earth, Daniel Grant walked through a garden that had not existed a year ago. Trees from 100 extinct species grew in perfect health, restored from ancient DNA. Flowers bloomed in colors that had no names. The air smelled clean and alive. He was older now, his hair gray and his face lined with age. But his eyes were bright with something that had not been there before. Hope. A young woman walked beside him. Her name was Sophie Grant, his granddaughter. She had been born after the isolation began, had never known the old ways of fear and limitation. Grandfather, she said, do you ever wonder what's happening out there? Beyond the barrier? Daniel looked up at the sky. The barrier was invisible from the surface, but he knew it was there, protecting them, hiding them. Sometimes, he admitted, I wonder if they've learned anything. I wonder if they miss us. Sophie was quiet for a moment. Do you miss them? It was a complicated question. Daniel thought about his years as an ambassador, the endless meetings and negotiations. He thought about the friends he had made among other species, the alliances he had built. Some of those friends had stood silent when the Council rejected humanity. Others had spoken against them. I miss what could have been, he finally said. If they had treated us as equals, imagine what we could have built together. All of us. Every species working as one, but that was not the path history had taken. Instead, humanity had been pushed away, isolated, forced to grow alone. And grow they had. In the 20 years since the walkout, humans had cured every disease that had ever plagued their species. They had extended their lifespans, enhanced their minds, expanded their understanding of the universe. They had built wonders that would make the collective weep with envy. And they had done it all, without a single word of thanks or encouragement from the galaxy that had rejected them. Admiral Lisa Mercer, now 83 years old, stood in the command center of humanity's new flagship. It was called the Endeavor, and it was a masterpiece of engineering, weapons that could crack planets, shields that could withstand the heat of stars, engines that could cross galaxies in heartbeats. She received regular reports from beyond the barrier. Spy satellites, hidden and silent, watched the collective tear itself apart. Wars spreading, plagues raging, the Vorn swarm growing stronger every day. They're destroying themselves, her aide said quietly. Without us, they're falling apart. Lisa nodded slowly. She felt no satisfaction at their suffering, only a deep, tired sadness. They thought they were better than us, she said. They thought they could do without us. Now they're learning the truth. She looked at the stars on her view screen. Somewhere out there, billions of beings were suffering. Beings who had voted to keep humanity in chains. Beings who had looked down on them with contempt and fear. Part of her wanted to leave them to their fate. Let them burn. Let them learn what it meant to stand alone. But another part of her, the part that had made her a protector instead of a conqueror, whispered something different. Not yet, she murmured to herself. But soon, the barrier held. The silence continued. And the universe kept waiting for an answer that might never come. The Vorn swarm came without warning. Admiral Zara then, of the combined galactic fleet, had fought in a dozen wars. She was Voreth, a species known for their courage and their scales hard as steel. She had never retreated from any battle, but as she watched the swarm descend on the Helios cluster, she felt something she had never felt before. Pure, cold terror. The swarm was not a fleet. It was a living tide. Billions of creatures moving as one mind, consuming everything in their path. Their ships were grown from organic matter, twisted and horrible, armed with weapons that dissolved metal and flesh alike. They did not negotiate. They did not accept surrender. They simply fed. All ships, form defensive positions, Zara ordered. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. We hold the line here. If they break through, the inner systems are defenseless. Her fleet was the largest ever assembled. 30 species had contributed ships. Over 50,000 vessels spread across the darkness of space. Weapons charged and ready. It should have been enough. It was not even close. The battle lasted 6 hours. In the first hour, the swarm broke through the outer lines. In the second, they surrounded the flanks. By the fourth hour, 2/3 of the fleet was gone, torn apart and consumed by the endless hunger of the swarm. Zara watched her ships die one by one. She heard the screams over the radio, the desperate calls for help that no one could answer. She saw brave captains ram their vessels into the swarm, hoping to create gaps that closed instantly. Admiral, her first officer said, his voice breaking, we've lost contact with the left wing. The Relian ships are retreating. The Krellian medical vessels are being overrun. Zara closed her eyes. This was the end. Not just for her fleet, but for the entire collective. Once the swarm consumed the Helios cluster, nothing could stop them. On a small cruiser at the edge of the battle, Lieutenant Greg Holloway fought to keep his ship alive. He was one of the last humans in collective space. One of the few who had chosen to stay behind when Earth withdrew. He had believed he could make a difference, could show the galaxy that humans could be trusted. Now he was dying with the rest of them. His ship was crippled, engines gone, weapons exhausted. Around him, his crew lay wounded, or dead. Through the cracked view screen, he could see the swarm approaching, their organic ships pulsing with horrible life. Greg crawled to the communication console. His fingers were broken, his body broken, but his spirit was not. He thought about Earth, about the barrier that separated his people from the rest of the universe. He thought about the stories his mother had told him, about humanity's stubborn refusal to give up. This is Lieutenant Greg Holloway, he said into the microphone. His voice was weak, barely above a whisper. To anyone in the Sol system who can hear this, if you're still out there, if you're still listening, we need you. The collective is falling. The swarm is winning. Please. He paused, coughing blood. Outside, the swarm ships grew closer. I know they treated us badly. I know they pushed us away. But there are innocent people here. Children. Families. They don't deserve to die because their leaders were fools. Please, help us. He transmitted the message toward the Sol barrier. Then the swarm reached his ship, and everything went dark. The message traveled at the speed of light. It crossed empty space and burning battlefields. It passed through debris fields of destroyed ships and clouds of drifting bodies. Finally, it reached the Sol barrier and disappeared inside. For 3 days, nothing happened. The swarm continued its advance. The remains of the collective fleet fell back to defend the homeworlds. Civilians packed evacuation ships, knowing there was nowhere safe to go. Governments collapsed. Prayers were offered to gods who did not answer. On the 4th day, the barrier flickered. Admiral Zara then was on her damaged flagship, preparing for a final stand, when her sensor officer shouted in disbelief, "Admiral, the Sol barrier is opening." Zara spun to face the viewscreen. What she saw stole the breath from her lungs. Ships emerged from the barrier. But they were not like any ships she had ever seen. They were vast, each one the size of a small moon. They moved through space with impossible grace, as if the laws of physics did not apply to them. Light bent around their hulls, creating halos of rainbow fire. There were thousands of them, an armada that dwarfed anything the collective had ever built. At the head of this impossible fleet was a single vessel, smaller than the others but somehow more presence. Its name was written on its hull in letters that glowed like stars, Endeavor. Every communication channel in the sector crackled to life. A voice spoke, calm and clear. It was a voice Zara recognized from history recordings. Daniel Grant, the last human ambassador. The man who had walked out 20 years ago. "This is Daniel Grant of the Earth Fleet. We received your message, Lieutenant Holloway. We heard your call." Across the battlefield, surviving crews stopped what they were doing. Wounded soldiers looked up at screens. Dying ships broadcast the message to anyone who could hear. "We're not here to save the collective," Daniel continued. "We're not here to prove anything or win your approval. We're here because a brave young man asked for help. We're here because that's who we are. We're here because that's who we are." On the Endeavor's bridge, Lisa Mercer stood beside Daniel. She was old now, her hair white as snow, but her eyes were sharp and fierce. Around them, human officers worked at stations filled with technology that would seem like magic to the collective. "What we do today," Daniel said, "we do freely. Remember that. Remember that when you rejected us, when you feared us, when you tried to hold us down, we still came back, not for reward, not for recognition, because it was the right thing to do." The human fleet spread across the battlefield like a wave of light. The Vorn swarm, sensing new prey, turned to face them. Billions of organisms against thousands of human ships. By any normal calculation, it should have been a slaughter. But humanity had not spent 20 years doing normal things. "All ships," Lisa ordered. "Begin Operation Reckoning." The human vessels opened fire. But they did not fire weapons in any traditional sense. Instead, they projected fields of energy that rippled through space itself. Where these fields touched the swarm, something extraordinary happened. The Vorn stopped moving. Their hive mind connection, the link that bound billions of creatures into a single will, simply ceased to exist. Without that connection, they were nothing. Empty shells floating in the void, their hunger extinguished like candles in a hurricane. 11 minutes. That was how long it took for humanity to destroy a threat that had consumed civilizations for millennia. When it was over, the surviving collective ships floated in stunned silence. Their sensors showed them impossible readings. Their minds struggled to understand what they had witnessed. Zara then collapsed into her command chair. Her ship was barely functional, her crew exhausted, Her fleet shattered. But she was alive. They were all alive. Because humanity had come back, she opened a channel to the Endeavor. Her voice trembled with emotion. "Thank you," she said. "On behalf of every species in the collective, thank you." There was a long pause before Daniel responded. "You're welcome, Admiral. But we're not staying. We have a universe to explore. We just wanted you to see something first." "See what?" Zara asked. Daniel's voice was sad and kind and ancient all at once. "What you lost. What you threw away. What humanity became when you weren't looking." The human ships began to withdraw, pulling back toward the Soul Barrier. They left behind fields of dead Vorn and a galaxy that would never be the same. And somewhere in the debris, search teams found Lieutenant Greg Holloway, barely alive in his ruined ship. His message had been heard. His faith had been rewarded. Humanity had not forgotten its own. The battle was over, but the reckoning had just begun. Throughout the galaxy, news of the human victory spread like fire across dry grass. Species that had never seen a human watched recordings of the battle in stunned disbelief. They watched moon-sized ships emerge from nothing. They watched weapons that bent the fabric of space. They watched the Vorn swarm, the nightmare that had haunted their ancestors for thousands of years. Erased from existence in minutes, questions burned in every mind. How? How had the humans done this? 20 years ago, they had been a young species, limited and controlled. Now they wielded power beyond anything the collective had ever imagined. On the council station, the 12 leaders of the founding species gathered in emergency session. The chamber that had once radiated confidence and authority now felt small and afraid. The great pillars seemed to lean inward, as if they too were waiting for judgment. The Valthorian High Speaker stood at the center, its crystalline body dim and cracked with stress. 20 years ago, it had pronounced humanity unready for equality. Now, it prepared to beg for their return. "We must contact them," the speaker said. "We must offer them everything. Full citizenship, full voting rights, a permanent seat on this very council. Whatever they want." The other leaders murmured in agreement. Fear had replaced arrogance. Desperation had replaced pride. A communication request came through. Daniel Grant's holographic form appeared in the chamber, flickering slightly with each heartbeat of alien technology. He looked older than they remembered. But there was something else different about him, something in his eyes that suggested he had seen things beyond their understanding. The speaker stepped forward, lowering its massive head in a gesture of respect that no human had ever received. "Ambassador Grant," it said, "the Council of 12 formally apologizes for our past decisions. We were wrong to limit humanity. We were wrong to fear you. Please, return to us. Join us as full partners. Lead us, if that is what you wish." Daniel listened in silence. Behind him, through the holographic window, the council could see the impossible beauty of the Endeavor's bridge. Technology that seemed to sing with inner light, crew members who moved with calm purpose. Everything about the scene spoke of advancement beyond measure. "You're offering us everything we asked for 20 years ago," Daniel said quietly. "Everything we fought for, worked for, bled for, and now you hand it to us freely because you're afraid." The speaker's crystals chimed nervously. "We have learned from our mistakes. We understand now that humanity is special, unique. We need you." Daniel smiled, but there was no joy in it. "That's the problem. You still don't understand." He stepped forward, his hologram brightening with intensity. "We didn't leave because we wanted a seat at your table. We didn't leave because we wanted more rights or more privileges. We left because your entire way of thinking was broken. You measured worth by age. You measured value by how long a species had existed. You thought that being old meant being wise." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We left because we realized we would never reach our potential as long as we let you define us. As long as we begged for scraps from your table, we would always be the children you thought we were." The Relian delegate spoke up. Its voice was thin with exhaustion. But surely now, after what you've shown us, you want recognition. You want the galaxy to acknowledge your greatness. Daniel shook his head slowly. That's what you would want, but we're not you. We never were. Data streams appeared around his hologram. Charts and diagrams showing what humanity had accomplished in isolation. Cures for diseases the collective had deemed permanent. Energy sources that could power entire solar systems. Ships that traveled between galaxies in seconds. And something else. Something the alien translators struggled to process. Changes to the human mind itself. Expansions of consciousness that opened doors to new ways of seeing the universe. In 20 years, Daniel said, we achieved more than your collective has in 50,000. Not because we're better than you. Because you weren't holding us back anymore. Because we stopped asking permission to be ourselves. RB, the Volthorian High Speaker's voice cracked with something that might have been shame. What do you want? Then? Why did you save us? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. A young lieutenant named Greg Holloway sent us a message. He asked for help. He didn't ask for the collective. He didn't ask for the council. He asked for innocent people. Children, families, beings who had no part in the decisions that pushed us away. He looked at each of the council members in turn. We came for them. We came because that's who we are. Not conquerors. Not saviors looking for worship. Just people who couldn't ignore a cry for help. Even from those who had hurt us. On the battleship Endeavor, Lisa Mercer watched the conversation from the command deck. Around her, human officers handled the aftermath of the battle. Rescue operations for collective survivors. Medical assistance for the wounded. Cleanup of the Vorn debris. Her aide approached with a tablet. Admiral, we're receiving thousands of communication requests. Every species in the sector wants to speak with us. Trade offers. Alliance proposals. Pleas for technological assistance. Lisa looked at the endless list of messages. 20 years ago, these same species had voted to keep humanity in chains. Now, they lined up to beg for scraps. Acknowledge receipt, she said. Tell them we'll respond when we're ready. When will that be, Admiral? Lisa watched the stars through the viewport. When they've learned to ask for the right reasons. Back in the council chamber, Daniel was finishing his message. We're going to leave now, he said. Back through the barrier. Back to our work. We have galaxies to explore. Mysteries to solve. Wonders to build. This one corner of the universe isn't enough for us anymore. The speaker reached out with crystalline arms. A gesture of pleading. Will you ever return? Will you give us another chance? Daniel considered the question carefully. Maybe, if you change, if you build a collective where every species is valued for what they can become, not punished for being young, if you stop measuring worth by age and start measuring it by character. He stepped back, his hologram beginning to fade. We'll be watching. We'll always be watching. And if you ever truly need us, if you ever face something you cannot handle alone, send a message. Not to the council, to the people, to the children and families who have no voice in these halls. We listen to them. His final words hung in the air like a promise and a challenge. Prove you deserve us. Then maybe we'll talk. The hologram vanished. The council chamber fell silent. 12 leaders stood alone, surrounded by symbols of power that suddenly felt very empty. Outside, the human fleet gathered at the edge of collective space. Ships that defied imagination, carrying a species that had transcended all expectations. One by one, they blinked out of existence, jumping through wormholes to destinations no collective map could show. The Endeavor was the last to leave. Lisa Mercer stood at the viewport, watching the stars of collective space one final time. Do you think they'll change? Her aide asked. Lisa thought about the council, about the fear in their eyes, about the desperate offers of alliance and partnership. Some of them might, she said. The young ones. The ones who haven't been poisoned by too many years of thinking they're better than everyone else. But the old leaders? The ones who made the decisions that drove us away? She shook her head. They'll never understand. They'll spend the rest of their lives wondering what they did wrong, never realizing that the answer was simple. They looked at us and saw children to be controlled. They should have looked at us and seen partners to be welcomed. The Endeavor engaged its jump drive. Space folded around it like a flower closing for the night. In an instant, they were gone. The collective was left alone with the aftermath of battle and the weight of lessons they were only beginning to understand. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Helios Cluster. 1 year since humanity emerged from isolation, destroyed the Vorn swarm, and disappeared again. 1 year of questions without answers, of wonder without understanding. Ambassador Kevin Torres stood at the gateway to the Sol system. His ship was small, unarmed, carrying nothing but a delegation of 12 beings from across the collective. They had been invited to visit Earth. No one in the galaxy had received such an invitation before. The barrier parted for them like a curtain of light. As they passed through, Kevin felt reality shift around him. Not painfully, but gently. As if the universe itself was making room for something new. What he saw on the other side stopped his heart. Earth was not a planet anymore. It was a living sculpture of impossible beauty. The world he remembered from old recordings had been transformed into something that defied description. Cities floated in the sky, connected by bridges of pure light. Forests grew on platforms that orbited the planet like emerald moons. The oceans had been shaped into patterns that told stories in waves and currents. And around it all, rings of habitats stretched into space. Gardens that bloomed in vacuum. Structures that existed in dimensions Kevin's mind could barely perceive. Music that seemed to come from the stars themselves. "Welcome to Earth," a voice said. Kevin turned to see a woman standing on the deck of his ship. She had not been there a moment ago. She had simply appeared, as if the boundary between here and there had stopped meaning anything. He recognized her from old files. Dr. Megan Shaw, the xenobiologist who had saved the Krellian species decades ago. She looked barely older than she had then, though more than 40 years had passed. "Dr. Shaw," Kevin managed to say. His translator struggled with the emotions in his voice. We don't know what to say." Megan smiled warmly. "Then don't say anything yet. Let me show you what we've become." She guided them down to the surface. They walked through gardens where extinct species lived again, brought back from fragments of ancient DNA. They visited laboratories where scientists explored the deepest secrets of the universe. They met children who could do mathematics in their heads that would take Kevin's best computers hours to solve. Everywhere they went, Kevin saw humans living in harmony with wonders, not ruling over them, not worshipping them, simply living with them. As if all of this was normal, as if all of this was just the beginning. In a quiet park filled with flowers that glowed like captured starlight, Megan sat with Kevin on a bench that seemed to be made of frozen music. "You have questions," she said. It was not a guess. Kevin nodded. "So many, I don't know where to start. But I suppose the biggest one is, why? Why did you come back to help us?" Megan looked up at the sky. Through the atmosphere, Kevin could see human ships moving between the stars. Not dozens or hundreds, but thousands. An entire civilization reaching out into the infinite. "Do you remember what the council said about us?" Megan asked. "They called us dangerous, emotional, unstable. They weren't wrong. We are all of those things." She turned to face him. "But they only saw the shadows of our nature. They never looked at the light. Dangerous means we protect what we love, no matter the cost. Emotional means we feel the pain of others as if it were our own. Unstable means we refuse to accept that things cannot change." Kevin thought about the Krellian plague, about how Megan had worked herself to exhaustion to save people she had never met. About how humans had fought and died in collective wars, defending worlds that would later vote to keep them in chains. "We could have done this together," Megan said softly. "All of us. Every species in the collective, working as one. Imagine what we could have built if you had welcomed us instead of fearing us." Her words were not angry. They were sad. The kind of sadness that comes from seeing what could have been and knowing it was lost forever. Can we have that chance again? Kevin asked. Can we start over? Megan was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. That depends on you. Not on your leaders. Not on your councils. On you. On every individual being who chooses kindness over fear, who welcomes strangers instead of suspecting them, who sees different as wonderful instead of threatening. She stood up, offering Kevin her hand. Come, there's one more thing I want to show you. They traveled to a place that existed between places. A vast chamber that seemed to hold all of space within its walls. Stars burned in the distance. Galaxies spiraled in slow majesty. And in the center of it all, human beings were preparing for a journey. We're leaving, Megan explained. Not all of us. Some will stay to help guide those who want to learn, but most of us are going out there. She pointed to a galaxy that burned bright in the distance. Andromeda. It's 2 million light-years away. Once, it would have taken us generations to reach it. Now it takes seconds. And beyond Andromeda, there are billions more galaxies waiting, trillions of stars, wonders we cannot even imagine yet. Kevin watched as a ship, larger than anything he had ever seen, began to glow with inner light. The universe is vast, Megan said. And we're finally ready to explore it. Not as conquerors, not as refugees, as travelers, as seekers, as humans. The ship vanished in a flash of light that hurt Kevin's eyes. When he could see again, the place where it had been was empty. They were gone. Exploring territories no one had ever touched. What about the collective? Kevin asked. What about us? Megan placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. You'll find your own way. You'll make your own choices. And if you choose wisely, if you build something worth building, we'll be watching. We'll always be watching. End quote. Uncomment. She smiled, and for a moment Kevin saw something infinite behind her eyes. Not power, not superiority, something else. Joy. Pure, boundless joy at everything the universe had to offer. You tried to hold us down because you were afraid of what we might become, she said. But fear is a cage, and humans have never been very good at staying caged. The delegation returned to collective space changed in ways they could barely understand. They carried with them stories of wonders and possibilities. They carried the memory of what humanity had achieved and the hope of what the galaxy might still become. In the years that followed, some species listened. They opened their borders, welcomed newcomers, shared their knowledge freely. They learned the lesson humanity had taught them, that growth comes from openness, not from fear. Others did not listen. They clung to old ways, old hatreds, old fears. They watched humanity's light spread across the universe and felt only bitterness. But the universe did not wait for them. It never does. On a world in the Andromeda galaxy, 2 million light-years from Earth, a human child named Emma Ross stood on a cliff overlooking an alien ocean. She was 7 years old, born on a world no human had known existed until recently. Behind her, her parents were setting up their new home. One of thousands being built across this strange and beautiful land. Emma watched the twin suns set over waters that glowed with bioluminescent life. She did not know about the collective. She did not know about the years of rejection and isolation. She did not know about the council that had tried to hold her species back. All she knew was that the universe was vast and wonderful, and that she had her whole life to explore it. Her mother called her name. Time for dinner. Time for stories about Earth, about the long journey that had brought them here, about the endless possibilities that waited ahead. Emma turned from the alien sunset and ran toward home. Behind her, the stars began to appear, countless and eternal. Humanity had walked out of one small corner of the universe and into infinity, and the universe, humbled and awed, could only watch them go. Far away, in the old collective, Kevin Torres stood before the new council. He was speaking about change, about hope, about the future they could build if they were brave enough. Some listened, some did not, but Kevin kept speaking anyway. Because he had seen what was possible. He had walked on Earth and witnessed miracles. He had learned the lesson that the universe had been trying to teach since the beginning of time. Do not fear the young and the different. Welcome them, learn from them, grow with them, because you never know what they might become. And somewhere out among the distant galaxies, humanity kept walking forward, not looking back, not asking for permission, just exploring, creating, becoming something new with every step. That was the human way. It always had been, and now, at last, nothing could stop them.